Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to 22 Panels. This is a interesting episode because both guests have been here before. I have Alek Schrader and Chris Schweizer. But they're I couldn't tell if like the manual is not the manual, the pamphlet that comes with it is going to have any comic itself in it, or if it's just character designs and a breakdown of the story. But mostly you're taking Alex wonderful opera knowledge and Chris's ability to make all things paper. Um, and you're making a monster opera themed playset.
Yeah.
So somebody pitch it and then tell me how you came up with it, because I mean that's the two first obvious questions is like tell people what it is, but then how? I mean, it's awesome, but how?
Um, it kind of it spawned very slowly over many years, over a decade. I had just made the graphic novel of Carmen, and I was trying to generate the next thing.
I mean, that was
Uh,
less than a decade ago.
that's true.
Because I did talk to you about that one, and we
Good
haven't
point.
been on the air that long.
Good point. Good point. Um, so I was looking for my next thing, and this one I knew would be all me. That Carmen was through Arizona Opera.
Right.
This one would just be my baby, and so I was kicking this idea around about a version, a concept for the Barber of Seville, which is like probably top three most famous operas of all time, most popular in the rotation currently for opera. And so I was scouting out artists, trying to meet people, and maybe get another graphic novel going. Meanwhile, I came across Chris's Santa's Workshop, and I caught that sort of like right at the when he first started posting on Instagram. So I sort of saw the evolution of that. I'm looking at it right over there. And so I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, Chris, I love your work. Do you think we could do a graphic novel? Because I love your style. He's got such an iconic, unique, and Chris look."
Yes.
And he said, "Well, I'm super busy. I'm in demand." And actually, what you said was, I've got me time. I'm gonna do my own stuff, and I have so much respect for that. Um, I said, "Okay, all right, fair enough." But then he said, "What about doing something else? Is there anything else that we could maybe do?" And I said, "Well, do you want to do a Santa's workshop of this idea?" And and he got on board. And then I found out that he's got a huge uh, personal opera connection. He's got all of this legacy and history of the opera that I didn't even know about.
I
And it's
didn't
even
either.
deeper than that. Our dads almost worked together at Arizona Opera. And I was like, what is this? This is meant to be. Um, so that's kind of how it happened, but it definitely that's not what I had intended to do. It just like the universe said, yeah, we'll put this together.
Mhm.
And Chris, anything you want to add? I mean, among other
Um,
things, your opera history
yeah,
that's
well,
new to
so
me.
what Alex mentioning is my dad's role with opera. So he was an opera singer until I mean he was an opera singer, up until middle age, but he was a professional opera singer, a touring opera singer, until I was about three. And his last touring role was with Arizona Opera, which is why I was like, well, I'll talk to Alec because that's neat that he's with Arizona Opera, and my dad has an experience with them. But he started or founded an opera company in Louisiana, Red River Opera, when I was, I don't know, probably six-ish, somewhere around there. And so I grew up around opera. They
Okay.
were always performing something or another. I'd usually be, in the wings. I'd learn a lot of the parts. I knew all the tunes. I knew some of the words to, if it was English, I knew all the words. If it was the rest, I knew sort of bad phonetic versions of it. And, sometimes he'd bring me on as a shamer for other people who hadn't learned their lines. So it'd be like, Chris, you come up and stand in, and I'd know the parts at 8, and that would be a splash of water for the folks who hadn't learned their lines yet, and then they'd feel obliged so that they wouldn't be shown up by an 8-year old. And I was just around it a lot. And we had a lot of classical music stuff in the house. My mom's a violinist, so those were the circles that they largely ran in, which is also why, despite it being a very different arena, I've been able to make a living as a comics artist because I was able to see the amount of work and time and energy and frugality that had to be put into a life in the arts, and had very specific expectations that I think were very realistic from the onset because I'd seen my parents in those same straits. And so I knew what to expect going in, whereas I think a lot of people kind of come in thinking that it will be an easier road than it is.
Yeah, no, I'm just sitting here going, every time I think I have a handle on the legend of Chris Schweizer, which by the way needs to be the name of your autobiographic sometime. Um,
Well, and I think one of the other things is that opera is so often viewed as sort of highfalutin. I mean, it's
yeah,
very cultured. It's very, it's very established. And I think the fact that I was I'm sort of a hillbilly, and my dad became a hillbilly after growing up a swamp cracker. Like it's there's a I think there's this assumption of uh class that coincides with opera that was largely devoid of us. He's still building a cabin and wearing overalls without shirts and stuff along those lines, while also being a art snob. So I'm also Ted, my buddy Kyle Starks, like
right.
he refers to me as a oh gosh, what's the phrase? Not conceited, um but basically, yeah, like a hillbilly snob, like. But I'm only
I
a
mean,
snob as it relates to art, and I think my dad was the same way. Like we were very non-snobbish in everything, except for
this is
the
just, I
arts.
mean, just to remind any listeners who either don't know Chris Schweizer or haven't listened to either the Chris Schweizer or Kyle Starks episodes in the past, Chris is the comic book artist that looks most like Paul Bunyan. Um, a- and like when I talked to Kyle, he's like, "Yeah, I talked to Chris today," and he's like, "Yeah, I went to the library and I found this great photo reference, but I was having trouble holding the book up, so I spent the afternoon building a stand to hold the book so that I could see." And I'm sitting there going, Chris, that sounds like the most intense version of work avoidance ever, because you've got a cell phone, right? You could just pull the picture up there, or if you need to get it out of the book, you could take a picture of the picture in the book. You don't
It's
you don't have to do
true.
woodcraft to be able to.
I like making stuff with the expectation that it will save me work down the road. But yeah.
That's what he said too, but he also made the point that he's like, I don't know how it actually could ever possibly save the amount of time he spends making it.
It doesn't. It is largely work avoidance too, but that's the closest thing I have to a hobby is figuring
No,
out
I get it. I
ways to
get
be
it.
more efficient at work that take a lot of extra
But
time.
but but then when we add into that like a love of the opera, like my head explodes. I just my head explodes. It's like uh I live in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky. My nearest neighbors are a raccoon and a a family of squirrels. I mean, am I getting any of this wrong yet?
No, that's all fair.
I mean, and Alec somehow found him and went, "This is the upper guy,"
So the
and
guy.
then turned out to be like right, not like a little bit right, like right. I mean, I'm
Well,
even
and
flipping through your. I mean, the only things that would even hint towards that is I flip through like your online store is, you do have some penchant for swashbuckling,
mhm.
and you made a poster for Beauty and the Beast, and the Hunchback of Notre Dame, but then when one remembers that you have female children, uh, um it goes, oh wait, those are Disney things, because then you see
Mhm.
Mars Attacks and Gone Girls and Night Flyer. It's like, what what
Well, and
makes
I
me
think
think this is the
and
opera
and
guy?
and that that convergence, I feel like I was the right fit for Alec with this, but also Alec and I were such a good fit together. Like I was so
Oh,
excited
absolutely.
to get to work with him because he had such great ideas, and also the one thing that I think was really wonderful is that when he was presenting these ideas, I had some familiarity with Barber, but not a ton. Like
Right.
my dad, I couldn't remember if my dad had done it, and my mom informed me that he had done it. That it was the last show he did before I was born, so I never saw
Okay.
him in Barber.
But you might have heard
Um,
him.
he's saying
Well, I just mean that
around the
they
house a
talk
lot, but
about, you hear things from the womb. So I mean,
yeah,
it was the
yeah.
last store before you were born. You might have heard it.
But yeah, but Alec was able to like. There's a type of research that I like to do that if I'm working with somebody else is very difficult to get, which is the sense of what's necessary. And a lot of times my idea of what's necessary to do a good character design or to do a background story or something like that is very different from what other people might think is necessary. And Alec and I are really on the same page when it comes to what's important. And so we had a long conversation, and he wrote up documents and things along those lines about Barber and about the characters and about his thoughts on them that really provided the exact kind of information and feeling and energy and vibe that was necessary for me to do a version that would reflect his ideas. And so it was a really good pairing, I think, the both of us, which I was really happy to be involved with.
I'm
Yeah, no,
telling you, there's nobody that could have done this project. Like in hindsight, Chris was the one guy. It was it.
I mean, honestly, like before I figured out that it wasn't a comic and therefore was a little bit sad, but I understand that I've been watching Chris working on his comic for quite a while now, and I keep going, Chris, stop building things and draw more. I want to read it.
We'll have illustrations. Yeah. So
No, I meant for his what's it called, Chris? The one that you've been
Brogan's.
working on
The
no, on
Outlaws
Patreon.
Apprentice. It's
Yeah,
it's
Outlaws
currently
Apprentice.
so my agent. So I've decided not to self-publish that because I was tempted to because I really like the agency and autonomy of that sort of thing, and I feel like financially it would be viable. But
Somebody
uh,
convinced you that
I
money is a worthwhile thing.
it is a worthwhile thing. I think I could make initial money, but the problem is I cannot. I have never successfully had any interest or enthusiasm for promoting back catalog stuff. Like once I'm finished with a project, it's very hard for me uh, to continually steer people to that project. I want to be focusing on another project, and that's a huge part of self-publishing. Like you have to
Right.
be able to constantly stay on the ball with your previous things to make sure it's getting out into stores, to make sure that people are still reading it, reviewing it, etc. And it would be very easy for me to entirely lose interest after that initial wave of orders. And so it's not really a viable avenue for somebody like me. It's possible, if I might, if my wife wanted to handle that sort of thing, like maybe, but she worked when I was a sixth grade teacher. I was prepping for grad school. She worked for my dad's publishing company and would have to cold call uh different stores and choirs and things along those lines, and she hated it. And I don't think she would like it anymore now. So that's not an avenue that she would really want to do either. So long story short with that, we're going to pitch it. Like he knows who he's going to pitch it to, my agent. And
Right.
so he gave me notes
Well,
on it initially. I did some
if
revisions.
your agent is still taking any clients on, give him a pitch because I'm all for comics people getting agents.
Yeah,
Not enough of them do.
he is not right now, I don't
Okay,
think. I
then
think
don't
his
pitch
his
him.
plate is pretty full. But he's a very good one. It's Charlie Olson at Inkwell, and I think that there might be he's had a couple of assistants who have gone on to become full agents. I think Claire Napier
Yeah,
is one of them. I
Inkwell has a good rep in the comic
Yeah.
industry. Yeah.
But I've just reworked according to his final notes, like sort of a last draft of this pitch. So he's going to be, I think, starting to shop it by the end of this month. In the meantime, I'm working on a short horror comic just on my own that I will put out online just because I needed something comic-y to do. So I
And
am
then you'll
drawing.
get
I am drawing,
bored.
Ted.
And then you'll get bored and there'll be a full-on House of
Nope,
Bartolo
I'm
comic.
gonna do it. I'm gonna do it for real.
No. I meant when you get done with the horror comic
Oh,
of your
yes.
own, you'll get bored because it'll still be working towards Outlaw's Apprentice, and you'll go, "Hey, Alek, do you have a script? Because maybe I am gonna draw this."
Yeah. Yeah. No,
And
it's
Alek's like, "Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
yep,
I've got it right here. Let me email it to you."
good to go. Just waiting patiently.
He's playing the long game.
Yeah.
I don't blame. I mean, I forget if because I backed Carmen and because I'm one of your Patreons, I forget where I saw it first. I got tipped to this project from both of you within like 24 hours. Um, but before I even realized it wasn't a comic, I went, Alek Schrader, Chris Schweizer, where do I send my money?
Well, thank
Well,
you.
um, and I think I'd even emailed you both before I figured out that it wasn't a comic. I think I had to like
Mhm.
rewrite my email while I was writing. I'm like, oh wait, there is there a comic or is it just paper? Okay, we should play it safe and say Kickstarter. Don't talk about your Kickstarter.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the pamphlet will be illustrated. Um, it's, basically you can think of it as the an abridged prosified libretto, maybe instructions on how you would guide the characters which are provided into the story that we intend with this toy theater.
Okay.
But that's not to say you can't make up your own. I mean, obviously, we want the point of something like this is to inspire creativity, is to inspire curiosity for the opera, for all of the monsters that we pay homage to. It's just it's meant to be a sandbox and a gateway to whatever you want it to be. And hopefully down the line that sparks interest in coming to an opera, a performance, investigating that, that the perceived highfalutin stigma of it all, which is not true. It's just not true, but that's the rep that opera gets. Um, so while I don't want to force opera on anyone, I'm definitely not saying, oh, do this because you'll love it. I do think there's common ground to find where we can share the space a little bit in certain mediums like comic books or toy theaters or I don't know, role-playing
So
games.
so really quickly, give us the breakdown of for those who aren't opera buffs, breakdown of Barber Seville and what lent it to doing a monster version and how you came up with that.
Barber of Seville is essentially the story of two young lovers who want to be together but are kept apart by a crappy old man. who also has romantic designs on the girl herself. Essentially, that's it. And this sort of trope, this type of story, is based in the Commedia dell'arte, which is an old Italian tradition where that's where the big masks come from. They're I'm describing them like this. They're sort of iconic if you see it, and not only masks, but the way
Like the Harlequin character that I think everybody is probably most familiar with comes from the Commedia dell'arte. There are a number of them. That's the one that sort of has stuck, and everybody knows Harlequin, not just through the Batman variation on it, but as this sort of trickster servant character.
But there's a reason why Harley Quinn is there are diamonds. Typically, there are diamonds on her original outfit. She's a clown. That's all based on a historical tradition of the Italian performance arts. And so when you would go to see an opera or a play and those characters are a part of it, you already know what to expect. You sort of know the story. The young lovers being kept apart by an old antagonist is tradition. Everyone would be familiar with that. And so uh having done, I don't know, maybe 20 different productions of Barbara Seville over my career, I'm not sure that the commedia tropes are as instantly recognizable as they once were. And so there's some sort of, you can tell people are being funny. You can tell there's an interesting character there, but do you know exactly the ins and outs of that character? Probably not. But do you know the ins and outs of vampire, or of Dr. Frankenstein, or a Wolfman? I think you probably do, or chances are increased that you do. So the sort of like eureka moment for me was that we don't even have to change the motivations of these characters. They sort of fall into this evolution to monsters quite naturally. So the Count, who is our hero essentially, is a person who's trying to disguise his identity while on a romantic pursuit, right? In hopes of winning or gaining that relationship. And so that's Dracula, but that's also Count Almaviva. We've got an old scientist, an old medical doctor who wants to control someone, uh, control her behavior, control her existence, and also has rage issues. So that's instantly Dr. Frankenstein, but it's also Dr. Jekyll. And we've got the character Figaro, who
I didn't really realize that until later, but how much the Pantalone Bartoli trope coincides with the Nightmare Before Christmas version of the Doctor. Like that's a sort of very explicitly that role of creator slash guardian slash predatory romantic partner
yeah,
sort of falls into play.
that's right. That's right. Who we have the barber himself, Figaro, is very mercurial. He's very like able to accomplish any goal, assist in any task, and so I see him as having that energy of of a a beast. There's some like Teen Wolf in there maybe, but the Wolf Man, who's capable, um, and also has a relationship with the vampires. If you want to go Twilight, if you want to go Underworld, there's that history to explore there. And then finally, our last main character was Rosina, the maiden, and she was a bit of a stretch, except that I knew I had to, if I'm using iconic monsters, I had to have the bride in there. And luckily we have a storm in the show with lots of electricity, and we have a Dr. Frankenstein character, and so naturally he would want to create his version of her. And so that informed the first appearance of Rosina to be secretly dead. Spoiler alert. So she's dead the whole time. until he revivifies her, and then she gets her amazing Chris Schweizer version of the bride. Uh, in a nutshell.
I like it. Wow. I'm looking at pictures. I'm trying to listen. I'm doing coordination for. Oh, you've got a real one.
Hold on, let me unblur that. That'll help. I do have a real one. This is the prototype Chris sent me, and it's one of my most prized possessions. I've traveled with it. I've played with it. I mean, look
And you
how cute that
successfully
thing is.
you got it back together. I saw you having half of it on the thing, and I was like, "Oh no, is it possible to get it back together?" I'm very impressed.
It is. Oh no, no. I honestly, that's one of the sort of unexpected rewards of this whole thing is building it. I
Mhm.
didn't consider myself like a real builder. I mean, I had Legos. I occasionally have had to put things together. This was so satisfying the way it sort of locks in, and then like I made this. You know what I mean? There's a real component there that I didn't expect, and so you
Well,
continue to
and
be the perfect person for this,
that
Chris.
that
Oh, I'm so
actually
glad.
that actually goes straight into my next question, and you're specifically even selling me right now because the money's a minor part of the issue, but the bigger part of the issue, and why right now I am backing you at the illustrated booklet level rather than the full on theater level is thinking of size. What do I do with it? Whatnot. So the size has been answered a little bit. Alek was able to hold it up in his hands. So it's a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit bigger than a bread
Yeah.
box, but not a lot.
So it's big, but it's also narrow. It's only about
Right.
6 inches deep, and so
Right.
it'll fit against a small shelf on the
So
wall or
like
something
six
along
inches
those lines.
deep and like what would you say? Foot and a
It's
half tall?
it's 24 inches wide, and I forget. I think 16 inches tall, something like that.
Okay.
So I mean, it's not small, but
But it's not
the
huge.
it's not huge. I feel like I really like
I'm
things
looking
that
around
have
my office to figure out if there are
yeah.
places that it could live.
Well, I
It's
really
yeah,
like
right up there.
I really like think. Oh, sorry. Go on.
It would require moving books though.
Oh.
Yeah, I like things that have a low depth footprint
Okay.
because I think that it's a lot. You know, the overall size of stuff. So much of that is sort of general square footage of the base
Okay.
versus how much space it takes. And so you have something that's pretty small, you can put it against the wall, you can put it on the back of a table and have stuff in front of it. So that's something anytime I'm designing just about anything, I try to that is dimensional. I try to keep it to where its depth is as small as possible without
Okay.
ruining the overall
And,
effect.
when we're talking, because as you guys have managed to probably notice, but we're kind enough not to laugh at and egg him on. I have a brat of a cat. I have two other cats that aren't brats,
Mhm.
but I have a brat of a cat. So how strong are we talking for this? How easy will it be for him to pick up characters and move them to God knows where? It's going to be easy for him to just knock the whole thing off of the shelf.
It will. It's going to be recommended that you use glue to put it together.
Okay.
It's got an EVA foam, and the manufacturers we were talking to that are going to be doing the actual printing slash cutting of the pieces. Um, they said that really you should be using Elmer's glue or tacky glue or something to be putting it together because that'll lock
Okay.
it into place. So probably it will not be, it's light enough that if it falls while glued, it's probably not going to be damaged.
Well, that's
That
good.
said, the cat will absolutely be able to puncture it with its teeth should it desire to
Teeth,
do so.
claws. Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and
Eddie,
it
you're the
is
reason I can't have nice things.
yeah, it's paper colored foam, so it is
Yeah.
carryable into other rooms, the little
Yeah.
pieces. But
We'll still have to
that
consider
said,
this
if you
because
had
it
it at
looks
a
awesome.
school, if you had it in your school office or
That's true.
anything along those lines, That's a different story. Fewer cats
But then
there.
you have to assume that I have a school office rather than just moving all of
Well, yeah.
them. I mean, that would be nice, but I'm
Yeah.
not a big enough deal for that. My wife has a school office, so maybe I'll pitch her on it.
Go.
Because it looks beautiful. I mean, it's literally went through my head, and I think I will. I do like that you're doing one of your art print posters, Chris,
Mhm.
because posters I can do easy,
Yeah.
and I love your posters. Um,
And we'll be doing, and the poster for this, so it's the same as the cover to a degree, except for the poster, instead of saying model opera set, will be a poster for a fictional
performance,
production
right,
of this
right,
opera. So
right.
probably I'll use my dad's opera company
Cool.
as the basis for it, unless Alec wants it to be his
No,
uh
I really want it to be
production
your
company.
dad's. I really
Okay.
want it to be your dad's. I think
Okay.
again, the
And then
universe is like
you know,
this.
since we're already funded, and therefore people should definitely go back it and whatnot. But there's more flexibility. Is this something you're gonna offer through your own store afterwards? Is this a one-time only get, or is this the type of thing that will have any sort of staying power, like your Santa's workshop or whatnot?
Well, this is going to be Alex. This is Alex's project to sell. So
Alex
I
product to sell.
I'm doing the design for the toy part and the drawings, but this is his
So
production. This is
so
his
then it's an
project.
Alec question.
So it's an Alec question.
So our initial run, I'm under no false delusion that we're gonna sell them all through the Kickstarter. So
Okay.
I'm gonna have the stock, and I'll find a way to make that available. But certainly, if someone asks Chris if there's any available, I'm happy to fulfill those wishes.
Okay.
Somehow, the idea really, to do this was that if I didn't create this in some form, I would not be able to stop thinking about it. I was
That's fair.
becoming like obsessed, and I would keep on writing
Well,
notes
and I
on
mean,
my phone. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
there were so many things that I was trying to just carry with me that I had to get it out of my head, uh, and it's in its perfect form now. There might be a few evolutions where
I mean,
there are.
I'm just looking at it right now. You showing it to me, the not actually playing the video. I'm just looking at the picture on the video. I love the detail in the picture frames that Chris put in, because of course he did, because that's how
Those are
he
Easter eggs.
rolls. Um,
Yeah. Those are some very clever opera Easter eggs.
I want somebody to buy this set and then, you know, produce their own YouTube version of the opera.
That's the idea. That's exactly the idea, right?
You
That
That's
would be
know?
fantastic. You could take darning needles and put them on wire and stick it
Right.
through the foam and move them from a distance pretty
It's not
easily, I
like
think.
there aren't many recordings of it. You wouldn't even have to learn to sing. You could just
Yeah.
use the audio record, pick an audio recording and just move the characters around.
Mhm.
Um, I want
Well,
that
and
now.
there's a long tradition of
We've started doing some
using.
crazy things with 22 panels. I now like have it in
Yeah.
my head that like that might be our first video. I don't
Well,
know
there's
for certain. I'd have to find people that would help me with it, because I don't
yeah.
think I'd feel confident with the staging myself. But I know some actors and
Mhm.
whatnot.
Well, there's
You
a,
know,
a, a tradition of toy theaters that have done that sort of thing for, generations and generations, going back to the 1700s, and, at least early 1800s, where you people are producing these, often either paper or wooden theaters, and then in the pre-comic adaptation home video or novelization days, you would get drawings of, you'd get these little these paper figures of these theatrical or opera characters, that basically what would happen is people would have, again, because they had a preconceived idea of which characters would be in place, usually related to these kind of stock characters from the Commedia dell'arte. um Artists would go in and with a sketchbook to the opening night of a theatrical production or an opera, and do drawings of the costumes on top of these already roughed out figures, and drawing the actors' faces and that sort of thing. And within a couple of days, would be producing these mount your own productions of, Macready and Hamlet, mount your own production of Marriage of Figaro, mount your own production of this or that. And people would do exactly that. They would go in and do these recreations of the show that they just saw for their friends or for their kids or for their parents if they were kids. And I think we're just sort of following in that kind of tradition of being able uh, to create an opportunity to recreate these things. And I think video would be a great way to do that.
Yeah, that's a crazy cool history, because Chris always has history. I'm actually,
That's right.
the school I work at has a thing, and actually, both of you are people that I should talk to. But we do a thing every couple of years called Odyssey, where we have um professionals in um various artistic careers come in, and for 2 days we suspend all other classes, and there's like 5 periods a day that students will go to either mini classes or performances. And this year there was a Chicago-based um, film company that actually does the type of stuff that you were just talking about, and I'm trying to remember the name of it. And I know I texted a friend about it, so I'm going through a very long text thread to try to find the link so I can put a different idea in Alex's head that won't go away. Um, because there are actually groups out there that not only do it already, but do it well, which doesn't
Mhm.
doesn't mean that I wouldn't necessarily ever think of trying to do it myself too, but it suddenly popped into my head, and I hate that I can't remember the name of this group right now. Um, and what popped into my head first was actually the name of Amanda Connors and Jimmy Palmiotti's production company. Um, so that's not right. They
That it?
make
I
comics.
mean, if they wanted to do something like that, I'd
I
be
mean,
on.
sure, you'd let
Yeah.
them. Yeah, 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 yeah. So yeah, I just there's certain projects that are just so cool that I sometimes run out of great questions to ask. So I'm gonna let you guys, anything else you want to add, anything that you thought was cool about the process, working together. You know, Chris is always really good at ripping on Kyle Starks. So if he feels like ripping on Kyle Starks, or can similarly rip on Alek, go for it. Alek, if Chris rips on you, you're welcome to rip right back.
I've
Talk
got
to me.
I've got nothing to jibe Alec about. Like I've been really really lucky doing this project because um uh, Alec does something that I like to do, and that some people do, but it's not universal, which is um he has partnered with, like, basically each of us is able to rely on the expertise of the other and be relatively hands off. Like, I'm not, like, Alec is writing the libretto and is, or the libretto abridgment, and is planning out what's going to go into the booklet. Like, he figured out what was going to be in every room of the set. Which details are going to be important, which details to leave to me. And from the design standpoint, like, he's leaving that entirely on my shoulder. I think there were only maybe 2 or 3 notes throughout the whole thing, and all of them were rooted very much in opera tradition or expectation of the characters that he had a context for that I didn't. And so it's been really a dream getting to approach the project from the standpoint of, I think this is going to be best for the project, and being allowed the leeway to do that. And anytime there have been notes or guidance or direction, it's very much in the service of it in a way that contextualizes things for me that I don't have the opera expertise that does Alek. I doubt very many people do. He knows the show inside and out, and he's able to provide um information about it, and a passion for it and an enthusiasm for it and ideas for it and new directions for it that I think have been great. So I could not have been happier with the partnership on this one.
But I have to say all of the same things in the other direction. Like I said, the discovery of why Chris is perfect for this project like continues on a daily basis. I think one of the changes that we arrived at was the first design for, and this is my fault, or my initial request for the character of Don Basilio, who is kind of he's a musician, he's a music teacher, he's like a money inspired sort of yes man to Bartolo. I really wanted to force the mummy, the Ardith Bay look onto that character, and it wasn't really working, except for the little fez looked kind of cool on him. But Chris brought up, if we add a character who is emulating the mummy's power set, it sort of throws the balance off for the rest of the set, and he was right. And so I started to reimagine that character. We kept the fez, but we changed him to Vincent Price, who is, absolutely works very well. And Vincent Price played a musician by the name of Dr. Fibes. If you haven't seen that, absolutely check it out. So this works. It works so well. And what he's holding there is what's known as the Basilio hat. And it's that shape. It's like a long tube. It's like front and back lengthy hat. And it's called the Basilio because of the popularity of this character. And so later in the show, in Act 2, Almaviva, having been through a bunch of different disguises, we've got 5 different looks in our playset. He sort of models a new disguise on Don Basilio himself. And so what he has to have is the hat. That's how someone who is familiar with the commedia tradition would recognize this character is by his hat. So there we have the Basilio hat on the fake music teacher, Almaviva in disguise, who is also modeled on the greatest horror musician of all time, Phantom of the Opera. Right? Specifically, the Mask of the Red Death get up. We've got the big red feather. He's got a red half mask on. So you see what I mean? Like, it all sort of comes together, and it's not, it may have started with something that I couldn't get out of my brain, but Chris was absolutely involved in honing it down to choice.
That's where, like, choosing the history slash must get the costume historically accurate nut was perfect. I mean, I think the first conversation I ever had with Chris Schweizer was about, like, was the signing for 6 sidekicks at Trigger Keaton #1 at Challengers, but we very quickly started talking about, what was it, Bronze Age, Chris?
I'm not sure, maybe.
I think so. I mean, you very, very quickly got into how much you loved researching what things should look like. You like doing
Mhm.
action adventure comics set in other periods because you liked researching the costumes and getting it right.
Yeah.
I walked out of there having to read Eric Shanauer's Bronze Age and Charles Portis's uh, True
Oh,
Grit
True Grit. Yeah.
because those were the which you still need to do an adaptation. There is a comics adaptation of True Grit, and it's not bad, but you would
There
look at it.
is.
There is.
I was unaware.
Now,
That's one of the few. There aren't very many existing stories I would want to do an adaptation of, just because I feel like it's, how much are you bringing to the table? But I do think that one would be a
you
lot of fun to
are
do.
a you are a what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Robert E. Howard fan too. Would you have any interest in doing any work with Titan right now? They've been doing the new Conan books, but they've really kind of gone all over the place with. They've been trying to tie all of his ages together. I think they'd
I
probably take a pitch on any one of his stories.
well, I could. There are a lot. I really like the Howard historical stuff. I am not as big a fan of Conan as I am of a lot of his other work. I
Right.
think Conan's fine,
No,
it's
I
never
know that.
resonated with me the way that it has a lot of people. But he has a lot of adventure, and he has a lot of historical things, and a lot of them are very funny. Um, which I don't think a lot of people necessarily equate Howard with comedy, but his sense of humor is absolutely fantastic. When
Did I
it
see
comes to writing.
did I see you draw Solomon Kane?
Yeah, I've done a Solomon Cat. I've done a bunch. Like I did.
Oh
I've
yeah.
done most of his lead characters at some point. But he's got a character that's basically like a proto Flashman. If you all are familiar with the Flashman books, it's a British series that's very very great. And the premise is that it's this absolute worst guy. He's just a coward. He's a bully. He's a sneak thief. He's a cheat. Like he'll throw his own mother under a bus to avoid being mildly inconvenienced. Like he's just terrible. But he always comes out of every encounter looking heroic. And so it's sort of like a first person narration of this. And that started in the late 60s. But there's a Howard series that's sort of the same. It's this knight who, or it's not a series, it's a story, and I forget the title, but it's a knight in the 1200s who is caught by another knight in bed with the guy's wife, and he's just fleeing into like enemy territory during the Crusades in order to avoid getting killed by this knight, and keeps finding himself sort of lauded for his heroism, just trying to get away from this guy who's going to kill him. Like he has to fight these other people, and it just kind of lucks out on his side. And it's very funny. It's full of action. It's full of adventure. But it's also like the first time I've seen that kind of story, chronologically in terms of publishing history. So there's all sorts of these really rich stories that he's done that are just great. And I think it could be fun. I tend to be more inclined to want to do an original story using established characters than I am an adaptation of an existing story. Because I think that there's
Well,
a lot of
and I mean that
fun to be had there.
I don't know if you're reading any of them, but I mean Titan isn't right now doing the original stories. They're
No, I
doing new
haven't. Well,
stories, but they're
I
doing
know a
them
couple of
with
folks at Titan, so it might be worth
yeah.
reaching out and seeing what they're doing
Jim
with it.
Zub has been doing fantastic work on the writing, and who's doing his art right now. I mean, I'm not normally a Conan guy,
Yeah.
but I had another friend that like isn't normally a Conan guy go nuts over the first issue. I'm like, okay, I gotta go read it. Um,
Well, and if I find myself
Robert
in
De La Torre
yeah doing that,
is doing
I'll give you a holler.
yeah. But like this last story arc, they sent Conan back in time, and he wound up doing stuff with Cull. So I mean, it seems like they're trying to go in all different directions. So
Yeah.
I don't know what I mean, I know a lot of it's public domain, but I don't know what if any rights stuff are going on. But it seems like if you wanted to do stories with Howard characters, that would be the people to talk to right now.
It probably would be, and the public domain stuff. I think that's something that's really interesting with a lot of both with comics and with opera, and something that, so we did a talk yesterday with Lee Walton, and something that I think is really interesting is that comics and opera have something in common, which is that they are both the marriage of multiple artistic disciplines,
Yeah.
more so than most other aspects. There is, with opera. Alec, what are some of the different disciplines that all fall under the purview of opera?
Yeah, right. I mean,
Sorry to
obviously,
spring this on you without anything. I'm like, yeah,
let's do it.
answer this question.
Let's do it. It's like Charlie Rose. So we've got music, obviously, right? But we've got acting, we've got the live theater aspect of everything, costume design, set design, lighting design. It's all wrapped up in one. And like I said, it's live. It's happening right now. So the audience is experiencing everything in real time. It's not captured, or it wasn't intended to be captured or preserved, but that the performance would be the experience. And all of those things are happening at once, unlike even just, a typical straight theater. There might be music, but it's not, the music isn't the reason.
Foundational.
Right.
Yeah.
With opera, music is the reason, specifically the vocalism is the reason,
Well, and that ephemeral, like the ephemerality of performance and opera is one of the things, and this is probably unhealthy from an ego standpoint. But it's one of the things that makes me inclined towards comics or print or things along those lines, is that there's seemingly a permanence to that, and that, of course, is a lie. It's an illusion that there is that. I can look back at when I was in college. I read what got me interested in the Commedia dell'arte in the first place was reading Scaramouche by Raphael Sabatini, which is a wonderful book in which a guy decides he wants to take down the monarchy and does so by joining an improv comedy troupe. And it's a swashbuckler, but I really liked that book and I wanted to read more. And despite the fact that Sabatini was an absolute bestseller, gangbusters, popular writer, Stephen King numbers for his era, tons of his stuff got made into movies, Captain Blood, The Black Swan, etc. When I was in college, Scaramouche was the only one of his books in print. And in a or very early days of eBay, you couldn't find him unless you stumbled across him in a store. And that was a real rude awakening for me, that even the seeming permanence of publishing is in itself ephemeral. It has a longer shelf life than does a stage production, which is, resides in the memories of the people, immediately afterwards, and that's it. But you still have, maybe 1 or 2 decades of people being able to find your stuff on demand without having to actively search for it, with very, very, very rare expectations. But comics, like opera, I think has a lot of different disciplines informing it. You've also got acting. You're emoting with your characters. How you're positioning word balloons. How you've got the staging aspects. I feel there's a lot of people discuss the similarities between film and comics, and I think something that's far less discussed is the similarity between theatrical staging in comics. Like, there's a lot of important positioning of the characters within the frame of the shot that movies, because they don't have formal aspects like word balloons and stuff, are not necessarily taking into consideration as much as comics need to. And I think that there are formal elements that have to be considered, audience sight lines, etc., in theatrical staging and opera staging that comics can learn a lot more from if they're looking at. And there's also the costume design aspect. There's the set design aspect. To the there's lighting so far as how you're choosing to depict your colors. There's a lot of crossover between the two, and I find that really exhilarating. I've got pretty substantial ADD, and by having something in which I'm having to focus on 14 different elements at any given point, it keeps me focused on a single project in a way that sitting down and just doing a drawing or writing a story or something does not excite all of those different elements of my brain at the same time. And I think that doing stuff on stage can be similar for folks of a likewise disposition.
I like that analogy between the I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. The number of different distinct disciplines in comics and in opera are similar. Makes me want even more opera and comics. Or musical theater. Musical theater can be similar. Just anything that like. And for that matter, I think of like actors I've known, theater kids I've known. The ones that are drawn to opera and musical theater are the ones that get bored when they just have to deliver their lines. It's like, no, I need more. I need more.
Yeah.
Give me a dance. Give me a I mean, one of my best friends is a theater, musical theater master's degree from Boston Conservatory. And like she gets frustrated at rock shows when they're just standing and playing guitar. There's no theatrical. It's like I'm like yeah, they're not music theater people. They're musicians. But she knows the ones that do everything, and for her money, she wants it all.
I did an illustration class one time, and it was maddening. It was like, you're spending, we had 4 weeks to complete an illustration, and I just like,
a single panel illustration.
Yeah.
For a comics person.
Maybe it was 2 weeks. It was still,
yeah, but for a comics person,
one week and 6 days longer than it should have been. So it was, it's hard. And that isn't to say that, you shouldn't necessarily spend time on, perfecting one aspect of things. But I think Alek is definitely a master of the vocal performances, and seeing snippets of him. I've never seen him live, but I've seen various recordings of him doing stuff. I mean, he's emotive and expressive. He's got acting, but I'm sure there are probably aspects that he, just like any of us who are doing multidiscipline art, we're prioritizing certain things. There's some things that we have to be good at in order to get the job. And in order to have the opportunities to do the other things. And then there are other parts that we try our best to do as well as we can at, but we're still perpetually learning in those arenas. Those aren't the arenas that we've mastered yet, and those are the ones in which we're trying to get ever better. And as Alek pivots from performance to directing, I'm sure that introduces a whole lot of other new aspects that you are, some of which you probably have an extremely firm handle on, and some of which you're probably learning as you go.
Totally right. I don't want to get too heady, but I think artists are constantly discovering. It's the curiosity, it's the creativity to explore, to continue learning. I think that's what an artist who becomes a master doesn't stop that process. Mm-hmm. No one arrives and they're like, I'm just going to lock this in at this point. You know what I mean?
And when they do, you notice it. Like the second right. half of their body of work tends to be extremely disappointing. There are some directors, especially, that I used to love, and that, they got to a point where it becomes clear that they stopped trying to get better. And if you're not trying to get better, it's very easy to get worse. Uh and so yeah, so I think most of the that doesn't mean that you have to dramatically change your approach to
Right.
filmmaking or staging or singing or drawing or whatever with each successive project, but you do need to be, pushing yourself a little bit, and saying, what is it that I'm not, you hope that you do hope that you get to a point where nothing is an insurmountable challenge. Like I'm lucky enough to be at a point where I'm drawing somebody right now that's descending into a cave, and there's all this stuff built in the cave, and there's, you know, different perspectives and different things. And doing verticality is always tricky to convey that sense of space and scale, as mountains or whatever. And it's coming along really well, and I'm not struggling with it the way I would have a few years ago. Um, and that's great, but I'm sure there will be other things that I'm struggling with. You know, I don't know. You want to get to where you're like, I don't know how to draw everything. How's the best way to put this? I I don't know how to draw everything. Like if you're like, hey, draw, a 1975 Chevy Caprice or something, I can't sit down and do that, but I know how to draw anything. Like I understand the process of how to approach drawing something that I don't know how to do, and that's something I didn't always have. And I think that's where the challenge is now, is less figuring out how to draw. But there's always something. Am I putting more of an emphasis on value than I usually do in this? Am I putting more of an influence in am I putting more emphasis on composition? Am I putting more emphasis on the formal elements? And all of us are doing these, and that's one of the things that's kind of both fun and maddening about these three-dimensional projects like the opera set, is that is very much outside my wheelhouse. Like I figuring out how to put something together, the mechanics of it have been extremely challenging. And it works eventually, but it's lots of trial and error, and uh it's lots of trying to conceive all of it at once in my head. There's like 15 different slots that have to go together in a certain way, and if I get one of them wrong, then none of them will work. And so it's so that part, that's the challenge in this project, is the really is a lot of the technical components of it. But it's good to have those challenges.
Can I just ask if the cave that you're going into, is that the Walmart that sank into the sinkhole and then discovering like underground dwellers who suddenly
Oh
have
man, that would be great. No, it is not, but I should do something with that down the road.
yeah,
This
yeah.
one is based around me though, just because I was like, I need to do something that's hyper local, and so it's not my county, but it is a neighboring county, is where this takes place. And I'm making up a lot of stuff, but it's like there are no cemeteries for 10 miles in any direction of this. Why is that? There are all these little churches. Where is everybody putting their bodies, etc.? There are cemeteries. If anybody looks on Google Maps, like my story falls apart, but nobody's going to. It's a story. It's fine. Um,
Is this the horror story you're working on?
yeah, this is the horror story. So I've been
I
drawing
can't
that
wait to
this
see it.
morning. So I'm just and I'm approaching it from the standpoint of it's I don't want to go into it yet because it'll be a
No,
surprise.
no,
But
that's fine.
but it's fun, and it's going fast, and I've designed it to go fast. Like
Right.
I've given myself aesthetic parameters that will allow me to do it much quicker than I might otherwise be able to. And that's gonna allow me to do it. I'll finish, once I get that initial draft done, it's effectively done, and I can get it out the door. Whereas some of the other stuff I, keep tweaking and tailoring until it's ready.
Right. Wow. Guys, it's always so much fun to talk to you. I like to wrap up with, tell me something you read, preferably a comic, but particularly with the two of you, I'm not going to require it. um, that you love that you wish more people would read so that you had more people to talk to about
This one. Should I go? I got
Sure.
I got a couple things I'm reading right now at San Francisco Opera, where I do my day job. Um, Next season we're doing The Handmaid's Tale, and I discovered there's a graphic novel of it. I mean, people are talking about Handmaid's Tale, obviously, but this thing is beautiful. Renee Knoll uh, did that. It's just gorgeous. It's
Oh,
really,
that is
it.
lovely.
Oh yeah, no, I
yeah.
somehow missed that.
I was uh, extremely pleasantly surprised. I'm gonna give put this in the office to let everyone feast on that. And the other one I discovered is another opera comic. This is based on Der Kaiser von Atlantis, which actually was composed in a concentration camp and was smuggled out. So that's how the creators died. But
Oh
they got
wow.
the work out. So the opera survives.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and now it's been adapted into a graphic novel here. Dave Maas and Patrick Lay. It's also very interesting to look at. It's heavy. Okay, it is heavy.
That's
Um,
Death Strikes. Is that what it's called?
Death Strike, The
Death Strike.
Emperor of Atlantis. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's published by Burger Books. So yeah, those are my things that I think people should know about.
For me, I've been revisiting the Arcudi Davis run of BPRD, which I really like, which is a Hellboy spinoff. That's one of my favorites. And anytime I'm in a spooky mood, summer is my spooky period more so than fall, just because that's when I got to be spooked out as a kid. We would, that's when we'd hide in the cornfields, when you got to stay up past sundown. It's where you'd be home during the day, and so you'd see horror movies that were playing on USA at 11 o'clock in the morning, things along those lines. So anytime it gets warm, that's when I turn to horror mode, and so that's probably my favorite horror adjacent comic, and so I've been really enjoying rereading that. I've also been reading through Vinland Saga, which is a manga
Yeah.
that's been translated by I I don't know. I thought it was Viz, but I may be wrong. It's downstairs.
I think it's
And
actually no, I think it is Viz because I
but
think it's
it's
on their. I've got the Viz and Shonen Jump
yeah.
apps, and I think it's on the Viz app.
And it's kind of uneven artistically. I think
Yeah.
I appreciate that the creator is pretty open about which parts different assistants are helping on and sort of doing heavy lifting on. There's some notes in the back and things along those lines. Um, but some of those assistants I don't necessarily like their aesthetic approach, and so there are some panels that I absolutely love and some panels that I really dislove.
Right.
Uh, and But it's been a compelling story. I've really enjoyed it. I've been trying to read more manga um,
Me too.
in the last couple of years because uh, it does a lot of things that I like. I have historically approached comics very mimetically, to where the stories you're seeing them unfold. There may be some formal elements like the way that sound effects interact with the art and things along those lines, but generally speaking, you could see it in a movie. Characters don't have word balloons. There's stuff along those lines, and I'm trying to stretch what I'm comfortable with in terms of doing things that are more diegetic, that are telling rather than showing, because I think that kid audiences especially tend to respond to those. And I think that's one of the reasons why manga. And then I've been watching an anime with my daughter, My Hero Academia, and there are moments in during a fight scene where it will slow down an individual moment, and you'll get four monologues in there about what's going to happen contextually.
Right.
And I enjoy that in novels, and I accept it in novels when I'm reading it. You'll have I really like for especially Sebastian de Castell's Greatcoat series, and all of his fight scenes are done that way. but it's something that I've been very reluctant to see play out in comics because for some reason, I think just growing up in the post Miller era of how to do non-word balloon caption based stuff, it feels cheap. And I'm trying to get away from things feeling cheap. Like talking about that thing where, artistic snobbery. I'm trying to shed some of my artistic snobbery because I think that things that I have eschewed for classiness reasons have given me fewer tools in the toolbox than I would like to have. So I'm trying to read manga to break me of that because it is a lot freer with its use of those tools than I think a lot of American comics are.
I mean, and part of that, and probably part of why you've got the inconsistencies is the speed at which they work is
Mhm.
ridiculous. I mean, they're putting out a 20-page story every week.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, Tyler and I are reading One Piece. We're actually racing each other for the
Oh,
for the
fun.
weekly. So rather than trying to figure out, okay, how much One Piece are we going to manage to read this week? It's like,
Mhm.
nope. Every week we figure out where we're at. So we're like, I think I just crossed chapter 150, so like 900 more to go.
And that's the thing that's sort of an obstacle for me with manga is I don't like long series.
so
Like I
so far they're killing it even long
yeah.
though, and I think part of it is what you were just talking about, the ability to sometimes draw out that action sequence. So in one sense it's long, and in another sense, like the entire 20 pages took place in like 10 minutes.
And that also, that brings us back to opera. I think that again, a lot of opera and manga, birds of a feather. You've got these moments of sort of internal monologuing that stretch out these moments in time in order to convey information and emotion to the audience in a way that can seem kind of ham-fisted from an outside standpoint, but has a beauty in its execution.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's it.
So another round of fantastic recommendations from Alec and Chris. I would expect no less. Alec, I'm a little upset that you managed to recommend a burger book that I didn't know. I'm kind of shocked that there's
It's
a
pretty new.
burger book that I didn't know. Yeah, but I have a comics podcast. I try to stay up on the new stuff. It was released during the time I have this podcast. I didn't think that I had missed a burger book. Of course, I'm going to go back and discover that I talked about it. I just never read it, but who knows? It just, yeah, this looks very cool. Um, and Chris, I've read the first couple of Vinland Sagas, and I adore them. I need to finish it one of these days.
Yeah, I tried the anime and it didn't resonate with me, but the comic is
See,
different.
see,
Like,
I generally have that wind up happening. I haven't come into a lot of anime that I love. Just a little bit too frenetic for me. Um, but then more and more, the deeper I get into comics, the less I like have moving pictures that I love. It's like, no, I want to move them myself.
yeah.
Alec is agreeing. So
Well, yeah, like I love the fact that you can linger and control the pace, control the flow. Like that's part
Mhm.
of the experience, you know, like
or the reverse.
yeah,
Sometimes it's like, yep, got all the information I need from this page.
yeah,
Time to move on.
exactly, exactly. But it's
Yeah.
up to the reader. It's up to the right, as opposed to this is where it's interesting because opera and comics have so much in common, but the live performance aspect means the audience has very little or no control of
Mhm.
of the experience. But with the comic book, the reader has almost all the control
Right.
on how they're going to take in the information that's presented. Um, so that's why it's vital, in my opinion, it's vital for opera to expand its horizons and translate itself into
Mhm.
other art forms.
Yeah, I haven't had him on the air yet, but I wound up talking to Pete Craig Russell out at CXC
Yeah,
last year, and he really
love that
enjoyed.
guy.
I mean, it wasn't the first time that he'd adapted opera, but he really enjoyed doing the layouts on, and
He
had
did all
similar
these right
things to
here.
say about opera and comics and the way it flows. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, always fun. We'll have to look for, Alec, you just keep getting busy. I need to bug you more often because,
Yeah.
you don't have enough comics coming out to be on the show for strictly comics related reasons as often as I'd like, but I would like to talk to you more.
Yeah, same.
Chris,
Likewise.
I obviously would like to talk to you more, but you're always building things with wood or drawing or like actually being a present parent. I mean, you always have a good excuse, man. And I completely forgot to mention to everybody when we're talking about Chris and building things, he also has the most elaborate comic convention setup of anybody out there. And one that every time I've ever talked to Kyle Starks when Kyle has gone to a convention with Chris, Kyle is sitting there going, never again, never again. Every time I tell myself never again because we're gonna carry that damn thing in.
He doesn't have to do anything. I carry his stuff in. He flies in, sends me his boxes. I bring in my setup and his setup, and he's still complaining.
Of course, that's the way it works. He's a writer. um,
Which
yeah,
is fine. That's our dynamic.
it is. It is totally your dynamic. And one of these days, I'll have to get the two of you together because I'm pretty certain that I'll have to talk even less than I had to talk today. Um, and that's always a blast when I can just enjoy the back and forth. Um, yeah, Chris, I can't wait to see what you're working on because Chris has been diligently working like the entire time, and I'm like, Chris, you got the camera in the wrong spot. Can it just be over your
I'm
shoulder?
sorry.
I don't need to see your face. As long as I can hear you, that's fine. The interesting part's clearly in a different direction. And Alec, what's your next opera for people
I'm
out in the
direct.
Bay Area?
If you're in the Bay Area, come on up to Napa or just north of Napa to the Krug stage at the Krug Winery. We are doing an opera scenes program. It's called Vocal Fantastique. I'm directing. We have 9 young singers with an orchestra. It's part of the Manetti Shrem Opera Program, which is itself part of the festival Napa Valley. That'll be on July 18th. Coming up starts at 6:30. It's only 90 minutes long, and then there's wine tastings after. So
Oh, so you give them the short version of an opera and get them drunk.
yeah, well, this is like the hits. These are just the opera favorites.
Right.
Doing 9 scenes and the good stuff,
Right.
the wet your palate type of stuff.
Cool, cool.
Well, Tad, thank you so much for having us
Absolutely.
on. We really do appreciate it.
I
We're glad to have a
I
chance to highlight
again,
the opera set.
I can't emphasize enough how lucky I feel that like you guys both immediately went, yes, we'll talk to you again, rather than you again. So for 22 panels, this has been Alex Schrader and Chris Schweizer. We will see you after the next page.
Hey guys, this is Tyler from 22 Panels. I'm here to tell you all about our Patreon. If you enjoy this show, please consider donating to our Patreon to keep this show going. We have many different tiers, all different levels to help you decide what's right for you. Okay, so get on out there to patreon.com/22panelspodcast.